I'm Greg Mipps. Welcome to All American Tractor Works. We are back with our 1953 International Super H. Super excited where we're at with it right now because I'm ready to put paint on this almost. We still have to put together our belt pulley drive, and we're going to focus on that today. But real quick before I got into that, I want to get in with you where we are. You can see that I am standing inside this makeshift paint booth that I built. It's real simple, there's not much to it, and I'm glad I did it because it really helped to contain the dust in the shop. I did some painting previous to this, as you remember, on my mower deck for my Ford, and I did not have this to paint in, and I got a lot of blue dust all over the shop. So I thought, what if I made something that would keep that dust in? I have a respirator on anyway. I can ventilate it from the bottom, help contain the dust and keep it down. It did a great job, as you can see. I painted some more Ford parts, that's why you see the blue in here. But my plan was just to move this over and use this for when we paint the transmission and the rear end here to the tractors. You can see I have it in here. It is all masked off. I did some testing with some of my red paint that I'm using, and we'll talk about that more when we get into the painting process of this. But I just wanted to let you know that this is where it's at. It is pretty much ready to go, and we'll do a whole episode just on the painting of this piece. I know a lot of guys like to wait until they have most everything together, like the engine on the front and a little bit more of it together. I can't wait that long. It's getting cold here. I want to be able to paint while it's still a little bit warmer, even though I could turn the heat on here in the shop. I still like to be able to open the doors and get as much fresh air in as I can. So I'm really eager to turn this red again. We've been looking at this old brown paint stripped unit for months now. I got to see it in red. So we'll get that painted, but before we do that, I wanted to put together my belt pulley drive and get that mounted on here. As you can see, I've done some base painting in here because it will cover part of this transmission. I want to make sure that I got some type of coating on this so it just wasn't exposed to the elements. So that's why that looks like it does. So let's focus on the belt pulley drive for the day. I have all my parts here. They're all cleaned up. I've gone through everything. This was as nasty as the whole transmission was because it's all connected, it's all one piece. It was just as bad. It was full of black goo like the transmission was in the rear end. Everything's been cleaned. It's ready to go. This is the old seal. I have the new one over here. I have a new gasket, and we're ready to put this together. So I'm going to start with, and I have my book here with me because this is kind of complicated, and let me get into that real quick. As I keep pointing out, you all know that I'm at heart a John Deere guy, but I love all tractors. They're all just the greatest things to me. I love them all. I don't care what make they are. But as I keep learning as I'm going through this international, that getting parts is not as easy to get parts for this international as it is for a John Deere tractor. And I mean, this being a 1953, it's in the tractor world not that old, and it's an international. It's not rare by any means. There are a lot of parts that still are not available. I've had to make some gaskets, which is pretty common. But the one thing with this that really kind of struck me, and it's kind of weird because I couldn't get these, and I didn't try going to my local dealer. Everybody says, oh, your local dealer can get you your parts. I didn't try that with these. And what's interesting is these O-rings are listed as an option on this belt pulley drive in addition to having the seal, which is right here. This is the new one. And what I also found in there and taking it apart was this felt seal as well that I believe was behind that seal. I got to figure that out as we go, because what's really odd is this is not in my parts breakdown diagram. But even though it's not pictured, I think that it refers to it as an option. I just don't see how these could be an option to these O-rings and it not leak, because these O-rings, even though this is very well and tight machined, there is a little slot in here for an O-ring to go. I don't see how this would not leak. So if it is an option, I don't know or not. It was kind of hard to tell from the parts breakdown, but I elected to put these in here. I had to make these because I couldn't find these. It's just a common O-ring. I wasn't sure what size it was because I never had the old ones. They were not here. And based on what the parts breakdown tell me, they didn't need to be. I'm elected to put these into it. So I don't want any leaks. So that was one thing that I discovered. It was kind of strange in gathering all this together to get this ready to go. So with that, let's start by putting some parts back in here, and I need to figure out how I want to do this. And in looking at my parts breakdown here, I think I want to start with the cross shaft that actually mounts the pulley to. So that would be this guy right here. And that requires that. And I got to make sure I get this right. These pictures are hard to tell. And I believe it is this piece here. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. So kind of sorted out my parts here, took a better look at what I was going to do, and I'm going to shift gears. I'm actually going to put the cross shaft through that the big shifting gear rides on. I think that'll be easiest to do first because the belt pulley shaft needs to go in as one big assembly, and I think it'd be easier to put that in second. So I'm going to focus on this cross shaft first. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is take and put the shifter detent in, and looking at my manual here, because if I don't, I'll be totally lost. Let me make sure I get this right. This goes in, there's two holes in here. Let me see if I can show you real quick. There's this through hole here that this shaft goes in. We can actually kind of pop that in there now. That goes in there. And then there's another hole that's through here that the detent goes into, and has this spring on it, and then there's the detent pin. So I'm going to leave that shaft in there for now. And as usual, all this stuff is not lightweight. Let me put a little bit of gear oil on this, because I don't want to put it in dry. Put a little bit of lubricant on it. Same with the spring here. And we're going to drop that spring in the hole with that hole assembly. There we go. You wipe that off my hands. So now that I've got that in, I'm not sure which way the shifter fork goes, but I am going to put it the way I have it right now. I'm going to drop this in. This is our shifter fork. I'm just making sure I have this the right way. I'd rather not have to pull this apart. So I'm going to grab this real quick. That goes on the tractor. It flips over. So I'm going to guess that this guy needs to... Those last longer when you don't do that. That guy probably needs to come out there. Let me grab this. As you can see, I'm working on borrowed space. It seems like everything here in the shop has something on it right now. It's kind of crazy. All right, I'm gonna put this in. It's gonna go in this way because this little guy here needs to ride in the slot for that gear. That's how it shifts it. And hopefully I have my shifter going the right way. And that goes on that flat. And then they have a nut that goes on that. I don't think there's a washer, even though, let me check real quick. I don't think there is. At least I didn't have one. That's number 40. Tell you right now, these books are an absolute must, at least for me. I don't know how anybody could get one of these together without this. I'm sure there are guys out there that could do it, but it's definitely not me. So I'm getting my nut on here. It's a castle nut. Hopefully I can get it to thread on. It's fine thread, so it might be a little tricky, and I definitely don't want to cross thread it because then I'll have a mess. There we go. And I've got that on there, and I probably need to tighten that up a little bit. Let me get a socket to tighten that down. So this nut takes a 1-inch socket, and I'm just going to take and tighten it down a little bit here to snug it up. This is kind of a feel fit, that's why it's a castle nut. You're just going to take up the slack on this shifter, and then we'll take and I got a new cotter pin we'll put in. And that has a lot of wiggle room in it, which seems a little odd to me, but maybe that's just the way it's supposed to be. There's no gasket or anything in there to keep that from leaking in any way. And as I look at this, I feel like this is not the way this goes. It looks like this has to be out that way. I want to say this goes. I'm going to knock that off again. I don't know if you can see this. I'm going to try to show you. Here's the detent pin right here, and that is going to lock over that guy. Maybe I should have put that on top of there and tightened that nut down. I'm actually going to try to do that instead of trying to fight that spring. So let me loosen this back up. So the shifter arm needs to point out this way. So what we're going to do is let's take and get it. There we go. I'm just putting it, I'm tightening it down so it's on top of that shifter fork, so I don't have to fight the spring. That's what I'm trying to do right now. And I have it on top of there, and I'll tighten it down on that. And that is going to take the play out of this shaft. So it's kind of one of those things that as we go, at least for me, you kind of figure out how it goes together as you put it together. There we go. And now it's actually shifting like it should. So, with that, let me shift it back up. There we go. It's dry, so it's not going to shift easily. So I've got that tightened down pretty good. I don't think I want to sock it home too much. Now I got to put that cotter pin through, which means I probably have to back off this castle nut just a touch so that I can fit it through my new cotter pin. Hopefully I can get it through there. I need to back it off just a touch. Actually, I need to tighten it a touch. This can be tricky, so take your time with it. Let's see if I can find it. This is always a challenge. It's there, I just need to get it through. Sometimes I almost feel like my cotter pin is too big, but it's the same size as the old one. And I'm not aligned quite a bit. I need to loosen it a touch. You have to get it just right, otherwise it's not going to go through. Hopefully this time I got it. Let's see if I can get it through. All right, I'm gonna check the fit on this cotter pin because it does not want to go into the hole. Almost goes through. All right, cotter pin has been checked. It goes through. I just need to toughen up about it, maybe. Okay, let me back this off just a touch. All right, let's see if we can get this guy in there. There we go. It just went through. And now, unfortunately, that's what I was afraid of. I can't open that cotter pin with that in there, so I have to take that back out. Lesson learned. Push my cotter pin in. Let me go get a pair of pliers. Turn that inside there. I don't think you guys can see what I'm doing. You're not missing anything. I'm just getting this cotter pin in there. The good news is, and I didn't mention this since we started, shame on me, Ken the producer is back. You might hear him wandering around the shop here laughing at me as I'm trying to put this back together. It's nice to have him back. He's been gone several months now, and it's just not the same without him when it comes to shooting. When you shoot by yourself, it gets very lonely. So, welcome back, Ken. Good to have you. Glad you're here. And I'm going to have to roll the top back as well. So I'm having to open this cotter pin the whole way. I thought maybe I could just fold back one half of it. I need to open it the whole way, otherwise it's going to catch on the casting in there. So that's what I'm doing right now, is rolling that back. And cotter pins always seem to beat me up. I might just go get a little hammer and tap that down real quick. I think that'll be easier. So I just got a big drift pin here. I'll just take and tap that guy down. There. I'm going to straighten it because it went in crooked a little bit when I tapped it. I think we're going to be just fine. Let's see if I can't tap that other one in. I can squeeze it in with the pliers. Yeah, I think we're going to be fine. Yeah, we're fine. All right, so I'll put my spring back in. I'll put a little bit more lube down in that hole for this, just so it's got something in there. And then I'll put my detent pin back on. Now I'm back to trying to avoid what I originally was hoping I didn't have to do when I put this back together, but it doesn't look like I have a choice. But I don't think it's going to be a big deal because I got this tightened up good. And there we go. So there. The shifter's in. It's in right where it belongs. Our new cotter pin's in there. Even though I still wish it was straighter than it is. And we are ready to go. Now I can take and put this big cross shaft in. We move this stuff out of our way so we don't need it anymore. And hopefully it was okay to put this in at this point. We'll find out as I go to put this together. Cross shaft goes in. I'm going to turn it this way. And there is, let me make sure, there's no bearing that goes in on this one. Goes into a bushing that's in here. The important thing with that bushing is there is an oil hole on the top side. What's interesting is there's an oil hole here, as you can see, drilled into the casting, but there's no oil hole on the transmission that mounts up with that. I'm guessing that that was a manufacturing change. I'm guessing they once anticipated that this would oil from below, but I don't think oil was getting up to this bushing in here at all. So what they did is there's a, like I said, there's a hole here, so it gets oiled from the top down. This hole actually does not even get used, but you got to make sure if you do take your bushing out, to make sure that the hole in the bushing, because there is one, lines up with the hole in the top side of that oiling hole. Otherwise, that bushing is going to run dry, and you're going to end up with problems. So, now we are ready. It looks like I can insert my shaft. This needs to go in and drop in, like so. I'm just going to set that in there. I'm going to put a little gear oil on here so we're not assembling dry. Just going to coat that up real good. And I don't know off the top of my head what kind of oil goes in this. There's an oil plug that goes in the top. I do believe this belt pulley does have its own oil source. I'm not familiar with it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it does get its own oil. So I got to make sure this goes through. Got to grab the gears there, and there we go. And we're in. The shifter fork is engaged. I'm glad we put that in first, because that definitely needs to go in first. I'm just going to put a little oil on there, turn this guy around so that shifter gets a little oil on it, and we are in good shape as far as that goes. So we're in, we're good. That is all in place. Now we have a set of shims with the, what is that called? The cage, which is this piece here. The shims, my O-ring, and then I had to make this gasket. Another thing I couldn't get, I had to make that gasket. So I made that out of some gasket paper. So I'm going to take this, this is the last thing that goes on. I believe this bearing will go, there go my parts. This bearing goes, oh no, it rides on that. That's interesting, that just rides in there. Okay, so if we look at this real quick, because this is a new discovery to me, it looks like when we put this together, there goes my book too, everything's falling off of me. This is what happens when you don't have enough workspace. This guy goes in here, and I would have thought that that bearing would have gone on there. It's got to go on there. The bearing does go on there. This cap holds it in. This is the bearing that goes on there. I was lying to you. So we'll get that in there. Let me pick up my mess here that I made, get my parts straight, and we'll get this together.